Dear friends, although I was already working on the second cycle of this series, I decided to produce a supplementary episode to episode 6. Who is the sea beast? And the reason is that during the last few days, I have come across some interesting observations concerning the name of the beast, which I wanted to share with you. As you may remember, in the previous episode we examined in detail the sea beast, its continuity with the fourth beast of Daniel 7, its description, and finally the calculation of its name. We also saw that this beast is not an isolated symbol. It is the historical development of the wounded Western Roman Empire, which was revived through the rise of Charlemagne in AD 800. That leaves us, on the other side, with the Earth Beast, its Eastern Roman counterpart, which later, under judgment and decline, evolves into the false prophet. Yet the sea beast does not decline so easily. It is given prolonged authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation through its heads, the global colonial empires of the West. Let us briefly remember these 7 heads. These are not secondary powers. They are major, system-shaping empires through which the beast expands its dominion over the whole world. At first, this acronym seemed to me to be only a sequence of initials. It did give the number 666, but it did not yet appear to form a meaningful name. It looked like something perhaps comparable in form to SBQR, the acronym of the Roman Republic, and I spent much time contemplating this acronym, with no further result. There is also a wider Danielic background to this acronymic approach. In Daniel, the imperial sequence of the ancient world is Babylon, Persia, Macedonia, and Rome. These 4 empires exercised dominion over the Jews in the Old Testament context. These powers appear combined in one body already in Daniel's statue, and they produce the acronymic imperial name of the dragon, Vita P. Miro, as we saw in Episode 5, Who is the Dragon, and Episode 5a, The Statue and the Dragon. You may find both episodes through the links in the description. So, many months later, almost by coincidence, I came across the name Apophis after seeing a news item about the well-known asteroid Apophis, which is expected to pass close to Earth. And as I looked it up, I saw that the asteroid had been named after the ancient Egyptian serpent god of chaos and opposition to the sun. And then it occurred to me that the same 7 letters from the acronym of the sea beast could be reordered to form a Greek name, APOPHIDA. APOPHIDA can be understood as a Greek-derived form meaning the offspring, or seed, of Apophis. This name, of course, is not an attested ancient name, but it is a legitimate derivative formation indicating origin, like so many others in the Greek language, Atlantida, Oceanida, and Leonidas, which means offspring of the lion. And this idea of offspring points directly to the conflict established by God in Genesis 3 verse 15. There, God says to the serpent, "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers." This line continues in Revelation, as we saw in Episode 4, the woman and the dragon, also linked in the description. So, APOPHIDA, though not an attested ancient name, is a legitimate Greek formation with a striking symbolic force. But this is not the only thing that makes APOPHIDA different. Most proposed solutions begin with a name and then test whether it equals 666. Here, the process is reversed. The calculation begins with the 7 heads, which the text itself gives as the structure of the beast. Then the same 7 letters form a name, and that name totals 666. Let us return for a moment to the Danielic acronym. When the dragon's name is combined with the beast's name, it produces a striking convergence. 222 plus 666 equals 888. And 888 is well known in Greek Isopsephic as the number of Jesus. This does not mean, of course, that Jesus is produced by the dragon and the beast. Rather, the name of Jesus numerically surpasses, overrules, and stands above the entire hostile system. There is another important isopsephic convergence toward the number of Jesus, my friends, but that will have to wait for the next cycle. Now let us look at the numerical structure of the name itself. APOPHIDA has 7 letters, corresponding to the 7 heads. It can be divided as APOPHIDA and VDAT. These 2 parts, in Isopsephic, sum to 151 and 515. These numbers present an elegant internal pattern. 151 and 515 appear as an inverted, mirror-like numerical structure. Additionally, the first and last letters are both alpha, so the name is framed by alpha and alpha. At the center stands phi. So, at first sight, the name appears as an inclusio. Strictly speaking, this is not a full letter chiasm. The inner pairs do not mirror each other as identical letters. But if we look more closely, the name appears to have a graphic concentric structure. Pi and delta are not identical, but both are three-stroke geometric forms. Most importantly, the central phi can be seen visually as omicron combined with iota. In other words, alpha and alpha frame the name. Pi and delta stand as related geometric forms, and omicron plus iota is gathered into phi. So phi is not only the numerical center of the name, it may also be its visual center. This does not prove the calculation, but it strengthens the impression that the name is not visually or numerically random. It appears to have an ordered, concentric form. Furthermore, if we analyze APOPHIDA as a visible Greek word, not only as a number, another pattern appears. Under the graphic convention used here, APOPHIDA gives 14 linear units and 2 circular units. At first sight, the name appears centered in phi, but phi itself is not simple. It combines the circular element omicron and the linear element iota. So, the name appears centered, and yet, at the deeper graphic level, it is centered around a composite point. This is already unusual. Now notice the next relation. The dragon gives the same graphic total, 14 linear units and 2 circular units. So, the dragon and the beast's name do not share the same letters, but they share the same graphic structure. The same, so to speak, graphic genetic material, rearranged into a different form. This matters because APOPHIDA is presented as the offspring of Apophis, that is, as a name belonging to the dragonic line. Finally, we can compare the adversary entities with their names. On one side we have the entities, dragon and beast. On the other side we have their names, Vita P Mi Rho and APOPHIDA. Both sides reach the same graphic total, and even each entity together with its own name reaches the same total. So, the pattern is not only vertical, it is also horizontal. This is why I treat the graphic layer as important, but secondary. The foundation remains the calculation from the 7 heads. But once APOPHIDA has emerged, the graphic layer seems to confirm that the name belongs to the same symbolic world. One final detail, the total is 28, which is the second perfect number. At this point, we can pause and look at the whole picture, my friends. We are no longer dealing with a single numerical result. We are dealing with several layers that appear to converge on the same name. First, APOPHIDA emerges from the 7 heads of the beast. It is not selected first and calculated afterward. Second, it forms a meaningful symbolic name, the offspring, or seed, of Apophis, corresponding to the role of the serpent's offspring in Genesis 3 verse 15. Third, it converges isopsephically with the dragon's name, Vita P Mi Rho, plus apophy that equals Jesus. Fourth, it carries internal numerical symmetries, such as the split into 151 and 515. Fifth, it carries letter symmetries, the alpha to alpha inclusio frame, the central phi, and the visual similarities in the remaining letters. And finally, apophy that carries the graphic structure of 14i plus 2o. This structure displays several interesting characteristics, both internally and in its pairing with the dragon. It suggests a common graphic material shared by these adversary figures. So, the name is not impressive in only one way. It is not merely that it gives 666. Many names can be made to give this number, especially if one changes languages, spellings, or alphabets. At first, I was planning to conduct a proper intelligence analysis in this video of each of the proposed sea beast names. So, I prepared a comparison matrix. But is there really a reason to do that here? Every other name now appears weak. Each one begins as a guess. Some are misspelled. Some are semantically poor. And in the case of Nero Caesar, the name must be transferred into Hebrew gematria in order to reach the number of the beast. But Revelation does not say, guess a name and manipulate alphabets, languages, and spellings until it fits. It says, let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast. And later, in chapter 17, it gives specific directions on how and what to calculate. Now let us go back to the table. So, which one of these names is truly calculated, my friends? APOPHIDA, that is not a numerical guess. It is a structural calculation of the beast's name. We did not begin with imagination. We followed the text, from the command to calculate, to the 7 heads, to the formation of the name. And then the name itself presented symbolic weight, striking symmetries, isopsephic convergences, and graphic characteristics. And remember, these observations come from only a few days of work. They are not the final result of exhaustive analysis. Many second and third line findings will need to be tested, filtered, and presented separately before a proper assessment can be made. Yet the data already appears so rich and so heavy that one may naturally wonder, what if there exists a larger isopsephic pattern? And what if there exists a larger graphic structure in these words? The implications of such patterning and structuring are difficult to ignore. It would mean that not only has history been written beforehand, but that language itself has also been prepared beforehand. That words with specific numerical values and specific meanings have been assigned their place beforehand. That even the inner letter structure within those words has been decided beforehand, so that the words could fulfill these rare symmetries. And that the graphical elements that construct the letters themselves have also been arranged beforehand, so that they could later participate in specific graphic patterns. Then, Revelation is not only prophetic in its images, but also in its verbal architecture. The names, the numbers, and even the graphic form of the letters appear to participate in the same pattern. And this acronymic name game has a deeper purpose. And this purpose is to keep the mystery hidden until history has unfolded. Only then could the heads of the beast be seen, the letters counted, and the name recognized. Because, as Isaac Newton once said, prophecy was not given to make men fortune tellers, but to be understood after it was fulfilled, so that it may become evident who governs history. This may be why, in Daniel, it is written that the words are sealed until the time of the end. Then, the wicked will not understand, but those who are wise will understand. History now appears to have unfolded, my friends. The heads of the beast have risen. They were given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. They have been identified, and all these heads have been brought low. So, what comes next? And who comes next? And when is he coming?